I mean, all the things that you were saying there about yourself, relating to other people and using your own experience to help others, that's exactly what my podcast is for. My show, I like to talk about the healing part of the awakening and how we got to understand the types of things that we're discussing now. Right? And it usually takes some kind of traumatic event or some kind of mishap in life that you really take a look at yourself and your situation and say, is this all that life is? Is this, is this all that I'm here for? It's a great chakra awakening after all. This hat that I have, this email address that I have, it's not coincidence. Your chakras are all being cracked open, broken open, repaired, having sludge torn out of them, being blown in place like hot glass, all being redone. It's the great chakra awakening. So, I hope you guys really enjoy it. Yeah, this is totally a video game. We also have, like, if you do good things, good deeds, the universe will pay you. So I call them earth points. So with Jesus being on the cross, this is how Jesus takes our sin from us. Time isn't linear, which means Jesus is on the cross right now, and we can send him our negative energy right now, because whenever you are, wherever you are, you can send me your sin now, and I will take it from you, and I'll take it to the grave.
That is wow.
There's no words for that.
It makes so much sense, though.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Godcast the Goodness Over Darkness podcast. I'm your host, Emmanuel Kingman, and with me is my faithful, lovely, beautiful partner, Mimi.
Hello.
Today's episode, we had on Andy Rouse, host of the Deep Share podcast, and boy, was this a good conversation. Mimi says it in there at some point. She goes, you guys could have talked 5-6 hours and it would still be a good conversation.
Oh yeah, you guys could do 5-6 more episodes and it wouldn't even scratch the surface of the things that you guys know together.
Yeah, because I guess we both just, like to look at everything, and we messaged back and forth on Instagram a little bit. It's how we got to know each other in the first place. And when we do, we always end up like sending so many messages to each other about something. And it's like, oh, dude, I relate to that. And it's just like, it's a whole day of going back and forth. So it's always a fun conversation when I get together with Andy. And I'm going to be on his podcast on one of his roundtables. That'll be in a few months. That'll be in the fall. That'll be something to look forward to. And maybe I'll go on a separate time by myself to talk about something. Who knows? But Andy is a really good guy. His podcast is really good. It's really well done. And what he brings to the table is, he understands things, and he gets his guests to talk about very poignant things that I'm not hearing those same guests talk about on other podcasts in the same way. The questions he asks are very good in that he brings out something that other hosts aren't bringing out of these same guests. So when I see like somebody that I heard on another podcast, I'm like, okay, let me go hear if Andy has interviewed them. I'm like, all right, let me go listen to his interview, and it's always something different. It's always something I take away, something that I didn't take away in another podcast that I heard. So
this episode was supposed to be about Anunnaki, and I think we danced around every topic.
No, so he broke down the Anunnaki story, Zecharia Sitchin. We broke that down. We spent 20 minutes, half hour on that, something like that. But we ended up just talking about so many other different things, because there's so much
branched off, yes.
Yeah, there's so much to the Anunnaki story, and it's really hard. So the whole idea that I had was I wanted to know about the Anunnaki at the something new, so I started looking into all these different people who were saying that the Anunnaki are actually the Greeks, and and apparently these people have huge followings, but they don't want to talk about it. That I don't know why, but they only want to go on their own YouTube channel and talk about it on there. They don't want to talk to it about that with somebody else who, in my messages I'm saying, like, yes, I also channel information. I'm also getting into the Greek people. I'm also getting into Anunnaki, and I'm studying it, and I want to take my information and I want to bring it, I want to tie it together with yours, and none of them wanted to talk about it. So I don't know if they're even real people. Maybe they're controlled opposition. Maybe they're just completely lying. Maybe that they are real and they just don't like me, or maybe they just don't care to go on my show. I don't know. Maybe they'll end up on someone else's sometime. I don't know, but I was, that's the whole idea. I was looking for something new, but even so, it was still the way that Andy presented it to me. It was different. I had Enlil and Enki backwards in the way that I was perceiving it. So I definitely learned about that. And once you break down the story, there's not really much else that we could talk about it, and the way that I just researched the Book of Enoch. I mean, so the way that I read life, the universe, is that I kept trying to get people to talk about the Anunnaki and the real story about it. And then what keeps popping up to me was the Book of Enoch, the Book of Enoch, the Book of Enoch. So then I really delved into it. And, for all purposes, and intents, I think that God was telling me this is the real story of the Anunnaki, the Book of Enoch. So, with all of that being understood by me already, the conversation didn't have to be geared towards that. And because Andy is so diverse, both of us, I guess, are so diverse that we could talk about everything else. Because, I mean, we talked about how many different topics did we?
A lot. But it was a fun conversation to sit and listen to.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we talked about Niburu.
Mm-hmm.
We got into that, and I gave them a bit of my theory in that maybe the moon could possibly be Niburu, or that destroyer that is talked about in ancient lore. That destroyed. Maybe it didn't destroy. Maybe it actually just made the water go to rescind to the poles in the ocean, and they froze there. Maybe that's how it was the destroyer, that it changed the pole, and that, I don't know, I'm not sure. It's in there. And I was sick during this episode. Mimi and I were both sick. You can hear it in my voice. It was difficult getting to it because that was the first day I got sick, and I was like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to do it, and because I didn't feel all that well, but I'm so glad I did, because that was a really good connection, and Andy really, his energy really held me and carried me, because as soon as it was over, I mean, Mimi, I just went right to bed. I didn't even download the episode, right? Like, usually after I finish an episode, I'm like, okay, I gotta, download it from Zoom. I gotta convert it to MP3. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. And then with that one, I was just like, nope, I'm going to bed, because I was beat. But it was such a good conversation. We could have kept going on, and I'm sure that we will have many more conversations very soon. Is there anything else in your notes? Okay. All right. Well, I think that's going to be everything. Make sure you check out Andy and the Deep Share Podcast, his website, thedeepsharepodcast.com. Check that out. Check him out on all the social media sites, the Deep Share Podcast. He is always sharing good stuff on Instagram. That's where I interact with him the most. He's always sharing good stuff on there. And, make sure you check out my website, EmmanuelKingman.com. Stay up to date on everything that's going on there. And make sure you stay tuned at the end of the episode for a preview of the next episode. So, without further ado, here is Andy Rouse. Hello, everybody. On today's episode, I have on an interesting man who describes himself as a meditating metalhead. He has had some amazing guests and has been making the rounds very quickly for his new podcast, the Deep Share Podcast. Everybody, welcome Andy Rouse to the show.
How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you? Welcome to the show, my friend.
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I'm so glad we got to set this up for the audience. I tweeted, or I think it was Instagram. I put out a message. I was like, hey, who is the Anunnaki? Who should I go to for the Anunnaki? And I was looking high and low. I emailed so many different people, messaged, and not one of them answered me.
Oh.
And when sometimes it says they saw the message, and it's like, man. So I had nobody that answered me, and I was like, come on, what are these people all fake? Because they have like hundreds of thousands of followers and stuff, So it's like, oh, are they all just fake? And they don't really want to actually talk about it. So then God kind of like put me on this path of the Book of Enoch, and I'm in the Book of Enoch. And then it was like a week or two later, you messaged me or you commented on it and said, oh, I know about the Anunnaki. So then we had some last week or 2 weeks ago, we couldn't meet up, and then now I finished the Book of Watchers, the little thing that I was working on, put out.
Great series, by the way. I liked it a lot.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And now here you are to talk the Anunnaki. I feel like this is a very linear type of thing that happened, and God set this all in motion months and years ago.
It's funny you mentioned that, because it's something I constantly say to almost every guest or appearance I've had, and I talk to them afterwards. I'm like, dude, there's always this weird synchronicity surrounding all of us meeting one another. And they immediately say, dude, yeah, same here. Like with this story and this story, it's weird. It's like we're all meant to be speaking to each other right now.
Right.
Feels good.
And when did you start your podcast?
I think I started like initially in January. I think I kind of like got it up and running in like late January, early February.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I got mine up a few months after yours. So it's like we started right around the same time. And
yeah,
I saw you have been on the Union of the Unwanted. You've had on some really good guests. What's it been like for you to go from, not having a podcast, all of a sudden, you're in the throes of everything?
It felt really good in the sense that I'm sure some people can relate to the idea where you're like listening to a podcast like the ones we listen to, and you're in the car and you're just like screaming out like, no, but you're forgetting about this, or you're not even, And so now I get to just scream and rant all I want. It's like, why didn't I do this 10 years ago?
Exactly. I feel the same way. I'm like, when I'm listening to something that I feel I have some expertise in, I'm like, no, I got to send them an email. I got to send them a message. Right. But then I'm just like, you know what? I'll save it. Now I'll do it on my show. And you know what? Doing my show, I don't have to post on social media as much as I used to, because you want to get these things out of you.
Yeah.
So I used to go on social media and do it. And now I'm just like, fuck, social media is the worst. It is so negative, and it just eats my soul. When I do it on the podcast, it's therapeutic.
Yeah, I like that. You're right. There's a vast difference there between posting a bunch of controversial crap or trying to get some likes. I think that's where the problem is right there. It's like a currency sort of thing, and we could use that word on multiple levels, of course. And, where this is just authentic. Like for so long, I would leave a friend's house or they'd leave my house and I'd say, man, we're never going to get that conversation back. it's gone. I mean, I can hold on to as much as I can remember, and that's not much, you know what I mean? And it's like, this should have been going on a lot longer ago, you know, for me, for you, for everybody. You know, just this idea of recording the good things we say to each other, because we're always digging deeper into each other's consciousness. And I always see it as two people that can relate to one another on a deep level and can have these kinds of conversations and just can throw caution to the wind and not worry about what you believe or whatever, and just go to town. You're kind of forming that pyramid right there. You're forming that top, you're meeting in the middle there, and you're building a structure per se together from the foundation up. And I think this community is doing a really good job of that, considering the fact that we can never really get to the truth of anything. We're at least building a big, beautiful community together, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I can't believe I forgot to do this, but everybody, Mimi is here as well.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Mimi.
Hi.
So Mimi and I would have wonderful conversations, and there was a time frame of a few months where I was just open channeling all the time, and it was just nonstop flowing through me, and we would be on the back porch, her and I and her oldest daughter and her oldest daughter's husband. We were all hanging out there, and her oldest daughter's husband would always say, you got to have a podcast. You guys got to just record these conversations. He's like, this is gold. You got to just do it.
Yep.
Hell yeah, man. And my wife and I are hopefully, I'm going to get her to come on my podcast eventually. And then maybe we'll do one together at some point, because we have the best conversations. I mean, you know each other the best, the most intimately. It's so easy to just throw out all the introductory, all the small talk, and get right down and pick up where you left off every time. So, I mean, hell yeah, those are the most valuable conversations if you have them.
Right. And you can have controversial conversations with each other because it's staying right there. But I learned my lesson, because I put out an episode. So Mimi and I have had a couple episodes together. And I said some things that when I listened back to it, I ended up deleting the episode, because I was like, you know what? I didn't come off right on, there was several different things that I'm listening to. And I'm like, yeah, I was too relaxed in that conversation. And I didn't realize, how divisive I might have come off as. So maybe I wasn't as divisive as I thought I was, but still it was that type of environment. I was very loose. And that's how it is when you're with the love of your life, and you guys share so much together.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you can't fake anything. On the podcast, you can kind of, we're all super intellectuals, but your wife or your girlfriend can always go, "You're full of shit on that. I know you are." Like, you just told me last night you barely knew anything about that.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's a gift and a curse. You get called out on your bullshit, but you
beautiful. Being called out's a beautiful thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what I like, talking to people who disagree with me. Maybe not disagree, but maybe have a different take, as long as they're open-minded about it, because then I can strengthen my argument, whatever it is. If you're going to poke holes in my theory, okay, I want to have the best theory possible. I don't want to just defend my theory.
Right.
I openly invite people to, pick it apart, and then we'll pick up the pieces, put them back together, and we'll make it the best possible representation of the truth as we can get.
Yeah, man. I feel like too often, or most of the time in culture, all we really see is we see a controversial statement, and then we see a debunking from an authority. And then now you can even step back a little bit further, and then you see maybe something from the alternative news afterwards and say, well, they're trying to debunk it for this reason, but really it's this. But that flow can kind of go back and forth over and over. You can follow this trail of logic forever and ever. And that's kind of why I've completely zoned out the current news. And I've kind of made a point now to just stick more to the ancient past, because I see at least physical reality. I don't know about the whole shebang or what that means, but I see a lot of what we go through and what this universe is as fractal. And I think we can learn absolutely everything about what is happening now from what has already happened, if we can understand it, which shit, in like 3 years, man, I would say I've come to 7 different conclusions and thrown away 15, all having to do with what we're going to talk about tonight with the Anunnaki. It's a long, weird, deep road.
Well, and the thing with the Anunnaki is there's so much out there, and a lot of it, when you boil it down, a lot of it is just regurgitated. I think you and I talked about this before. It's a lot of just Zecharia Sitchin's ideas are just talked about in, in a new way or something along the line, but it's always in that fashion. And just finishing
and people make that bigger and bigger and bigger. They take Zach's stuff and just
right. And I don't want to say there's a lot of that's said about Zecharia Sitchin, whether he was real, whether he was actually just making this up or he was actually translating this way. I don't know. You never know. But I will say that he was a very intelligent guy. All that's said about him, he taught himself many different languages. He was, if you look at him, I think it was high school and then college, he was a very prolific, intelligent, highly intelligent person. So whether he made it up or whether it was kind of just coming to him and maybe he'd never said that, maybe he's receiving the information psychically in a way, what he says, it feels at least like it isn't just a made up story. It feels like it is, coming from this place that was maybe the truth was hidden and that he was able to debunk it by translating it himself.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to say about Zecharia Sitchin in a positive light, where he does take a lot of attacks, even now. I have all of his books right here. I think
you got a beautiful studio, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It used to be like a closet for all my hiking gear, and that was supposed to be good enough. And I tried to do both. It didn't work. So that shit had to go. But yeah, I really appreciate all of his work and where he led me, because without his work, none of us would have any of the new understandings that we may be replacing some of his ideas with. You know what I mean? Like, none of us translated ancient Sumerian cuneiform. He's, at the time that he was doing his work, I mean, he was one of the foremost people in the field. No one can take that away from him. I mean, he was recognized internationally as one of the best, you know. So to say that he made it all up, and I have had someone on who suggests that, and even though that they respected Zecharia as well, but I don't think that's how it was. I think there's more to it than that. I think possibly it has to do again with that fractal idea. I often refer to like Matryoshka, the Russian doll idea, where everything is it seems like nature, or maybe nature's the wrong word, this program, whatever we're in, seems to endlessly copy itself over and over and over again. And it looks different and it comes out differently in different forms. That's something I took out of the psychedelic realm for sure, that everything was the same, even though it was different. And so I think the idea of some kind of enlightened, higher minded intelligence influencing us in the past, I don't want to throw that out. I don't think I have good enough evidence to throw it out, but I do seem to have pretty good evidence that that's not the only thing that was going on, because it does seem to match up astrologically, metaphysically, just so many in the symbolism itself that carries out in both directions, before them and after them. It doesn't really make sense that, say, Enki and Enlil perhaps were really these two characters. I don't know what to make of that. What do you think?
Well, I do. So I think a lot of everything, everything can be always used as allegory, metaphor, parable, however you want to say it. I think that is always a possibility, because like you said, everything is a repeating fractal on an infinite scale, and we're just not sure what that scale is, and it's not always a 1-to-1 scale. Like, my cat is me, but my cat is also my daughter, and my cat is also my girlfriend, and there's different scales that everything works on, and we're not sure how it all works and at any given moment. So with Enki and Enlil, obviously I do think that they were metaphors in some sense for the one divine being, that maybe the lower self, the snake, and the higher self, the eagle. And I will say this, that in my energy work, what I do is I offer Kundalini awakening, to initiate Kundalini awakenings, and then to teach people how to tame their dragon, and not just that, but cut the head off of the serpent. So I cut the head off the serpent with talons, the eagle's talons. So the eagle comes down, cuts the head off the snake, and then puts the body of the snake into the mouth of God chakra. And then you use the Kundalini energy instead of letting it do its own thing within your sacral and your solar plexus. Now you're using that energy, and you're getting to a whole new level. So I do think that the eagle and the serpent is a symbolic thing. But like I said, I do think that Enki represents the eagle and Enlil represents the snake, or
Opposite.
vice versa.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Say, I don't see it that way. I always thought that it was Enki was the eagle and Enlil was the serpent. So I was wrong on that.
But you're not necessarily wrong about anything there, because we're all kind of supposing, because
Right.
I've heard recent theories that are very compelling to suggest that it was really just one being. And we're talking about two very different states of personality, or states of, emotion, or growth, possible. Perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could see that. I mean, I don't want to take us away from what you're saying, but yeah, just to branch off there real quick, there's no conclusions yet. Right. I don't think, the game's still being played.
Yeah. So, to me, Enki and Enlil. So after doing all the research on the Book of Enoch, the conclusion that I've come to is that the Anunnaki story is that of a story to explain the unexplainable. That the star people, we hear that all the time, but we as humans were so skeptical, especially in the 21st century. We're so skeptical that we don't take it literal. We're like, oh, star people must mean that they come from the sky, rather than, right. Oh, no, they're actual stars that turned into people. We don't take things literal when we sometimes should, and we always assume that it's just a metaphor or, whatever. Mm-hmm. So...
Yeah, well, they also called shiny ones to your benefit there. I mean,
okay.
There's a lot of cultures that referred to it as the shiny ones.
Right.
So, hey.
And the Elohim. So I think like they're the Elohim, and maybe they did create us. Well, okay, forget about what I think. Why don't you, you're the guest on the show, so you came on to talk about the Anunnaki. Why don't you give us a breakdown of the story of the Anunnaki as you know it?
Okay, as I know it. And man, I just aside, it's funny to think about the first time I tried to do an episode about this, I just deleted it entirely because I was just off the cuff trying to do this exact thing. Lot. It's so much. And you get halfway in, you're like, oh, wait. I got to go back for a second. I'm going to try to do this seamlessly to the best of my knowledge. So Anu, depending on which part of Mesopotamia, is the sky god, and actually I do have the symbol right on my shirt here from the movie Alien from Sir Ridley Scott, who's clearly very knowing. But yeah, it's this sun disk that's on. It's Ahura Mazda. It's many gods, but in Mesopotamia it was An and Anu, and Enki and Enlil were his sons. And I'm gonna simplify it down to them for now, because the whole pantheon and the story about the rebellion, to me, I don't know too much about that aspect, mainly because that part of the story to me is very much about creation, and you can draw very good parallel lines from the creation myth, the Enuma Elish, to Christianity and all the others very easily. I've left it alone for the most part because I haven't gained a lot out of it. What I gained from is the symbolism of Enki and Enlil. and what their story tells and their parallels.
Before we get into it, sorry, I meant to say this
Yes.
earlier. Sitchin, he only translated what, like 13 tablets, and there's hundreds, isn't there?
Yeah, there's hundred, but no one has translated all.
Right.
Or if, well, I mean, I should say, quote unquote, no one, because we don't have access to most of them.
Right.
They're
so
locked away.
So for all we know, they could, the truth could be written down right there, plain as day for all of us, and nobody can read it, or at least no one's allowed to, in whatever
I would say
way.
whatever they're keeping is not yet to be revealed.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we got that in there for anyone who is unfamiliar, because we're going off of 13 tablets. So when you're talking about the creation story, maybe it's very simplified in tablets that we haven't seen yet.
Very true. Or the other, the other angles to the story could be told in a way that would give up the ghost. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You'd be able to see what it's really about from the different perspectives. Like same thing that happened with the Nag Hammadi library and the Dead Sea Scrolls. Like getting that perspective on the Bible must have been mind blowing when that first was, at least, accidentally found, whatever that may mean. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, back to the Sumerians, Enlil and Enki. So we have Enlil, the warring control freak, the type A male, the captain of the football team, if you will. And he has to have everything in control. And he's constantly watching everything. And he's the commander, if you will, if we want to put this into like a James Cameron kind of spin. And then you have Enki, who's this other brother who is the trickster. So maybe more likely we could say Thor and Loki, because literally those two characters are the same exact thing. It's basically the same story. It's the trickster god of Enki who created us, supposedly.
And that's Loki.
That would be Loki, which they never go into that part. I think, especially in the Marvel movies, I don't think they're going to touch anything like that. And in that mythology, Loki doesn't create humans necessarily or anything, but you notice the aspects of these characters that flow through each tradition. It doesn't all have to match up. You just hit the right points, the right frequencies, perhaps, and it lines up perfectly. So because Enki is the trickster god, and the trickster god is always kind of this presence that we can't really make heads or tails on whether it's good or bad, because it is a trickster, but it also has this humanity about it.
Right, and compassion to him.
Right, and that's this Enki character who gives us the truth of our origins. And before that's done, Enlil tells Enki that the humans can never, ever know, or they don't say humans, they say Adapa, which is, I believe that translates to first man, but I could be mistaken. I know Adamu directly translates to first man, but the story of Adapa, we are meant to be much, much more powerful than our creators, supposedly, in this story, because we have their genes and our own. And there's an attribute to the Anunnaki that makes them pretty much useless here. Whereas, I shouldn't say, we can compare that to many other stories too. What it's said in the cuneiform is that the work was too toilsome on this earth for the gods. So they had to create us. To me, that echoes the demonic thing. Once again, the idea that it can't create, so it has to use us over and over again. Whether the nature of these beings could have been aliens or some sort of non-physical spiritual presence, or highly advanced humans from another part of the globe we've never seen, I'm not going to speculate there, but the symbolism of these characters is what's important, because the story tells of this character revealing our power to us. And that,
so who
right
reveals
there,
the power?
Enki.
Okay, and Enlil told Enki never to do that.
Never to do that, because they would clearly be much more powerful than they would realize that they wouldn't do the work for us anymore. Doesn't that sound familiar? Mm-hmm. This is 8,000 years old, supposedly. And, from what I've heard from some experts, the Sumerians borrowed these stories from much older places. So we have Enki, who gave us our knowledge, similar to the serpent in the garden. And meanwhile, Enki's symbol is always the serpent. The cuneiform tablets suggest that he lived in the marshes among the snakes, things like that.
That's
so
interesting.
Yeah, it's
I
an
never heard that part.
interesting little parallel there. And so what happens next is we stop obeying. We stop doing what the gods were telling us to do. And it's obvious what happened. And just like in the Marvel movies, you always know it's Loki, right? So Enlil, of course, goes directly to Enki, and his guards hold him down. And, he tells him what he did, and he banishes Enki. In some stories, he kills him. I can't remember if it's the Babylonian description of it, but I can't remember. There are tales of him being dismembered, but I'm wondering if that's a weird parallel over to Osiris, which is often associated with Enki as well. And he was, of course, cut into pieces and buried in different places.
13 pieces.
13 pieces.
The obelisk, his penis was eaten by a fish.
Right. That's not symbolic at all.
I actually had, with Jesus, I actually had channeled some information that said with Osiris that the penis was eaten, and then so when it was put back on, they couldn't use the same one, so they had to take one off of a human, and then that's when he was started to give birth to evil, because he was two things mixed together. And he wasn't supposed to he wasn't supposed to have physical attributes to him, and he had a physical penis, and that's why the obelisk is,
Whoa. That's cool, man. That's an interesting parallel. See, it's an ever unfolding flower. It's the lotus. No matter how much we dig, there's more.
Yeah, there's always more.
So here's my favorite part of the story, is when he banishes Enki to the underworld, which, many interpretations. I have also heard it described simply as the southern hemisphere. Or he became the fisherman of the sea. He became a water person or whatever. But he was banished, and then Enlil has to go tell all the humans, don't ever listen to anything that Enki told you. He is the father of lies. He is a devil. He is a devil incarnate, and he is the great deceiver. And you shall never listen to him, and only listen to me, blah, blah, blah. Those names are very, very tied to the Bible, not just the Old Testament. These terms are thrown around in the New Testament as well, too. So it's a very interesting parallel there. And why is it that if these stories are the same, if they do come from the same place, why is the Bible so vastly different than these cuneiform stories? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Good point.
It leads to weird conspiracies, especially when you think about how the Bible was messed with so many different times.
Right. Well, just from the Book of Enoch was taken out of the Bible, except for in Ethiopia, which is super weird, because
it is weird.
Ethiopia has the Ark of the Covenant, which they have between 100 and 800 members of the church were killed by the Eritrean Defense Forces trying to steal it last year.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, really crazy. And so not only that, but Ethiopia, guess what their first day of the year is? 9/11.
I think I heard you mention that before.
Yeah,
that kind of blew my mind when you said it too. I was like,
The first day of the year. But it's their first day of the year because they're the southern hemisphere, so that's their spring. So up here it would be March 21st or 22nd, 19th, 20th, whatever, somewhere in there.
The Ides of March.
Yeah. The other equinox, that would be our spring equinox, would be our first day of the year.
That's true.
It's just very weird that Ethiopia is so tied in to Enoch, and he actually mentions it by name by saying, I went over the Erythraean Sea. So you got the Eritrean Defense Forces and the Erythraean Sea, which is now the Red Sea, which is just north of Ethiopia. And he mentions it by name, like saying that I went over it, like, oh, because I know that place. You know, he didn't just say it for and no reason. He was familiar with it.
And of course, there's a lot of mining that goes on in those areas too.
Yes.
Very clandestine operations that happen there.
Like the center of the earth there.
Yeah, maybe. Like those mines, they're digging up all those rare earth materials for our cell phones and every bit of tech that we're using to talk to each other. It's unfortunate, right?
Right. So since we're talking about earth materials, so why can you tell us why, you know, what's the Niburu myth in here, and what was the whole reasoning for making the humans?
So the making of the humans was definitely from Sitchin's view, was to mine the gold, because the gold in his story was going to assist in repairing their atmosphere on Nibiru. The crossing, as it translates loosely, right? It's not exact. We don't have a lot of information that's very consistent on Nibiru too. It's weird because in some situations it seems to be unmistakably a physical object that the people are witnessing. But then on another level, I guess that could still just be star myth and it could be metaphor, perhaps. But I don't know. I tend to think that it was about some kind of cosmic event, at least. But there's two different theories there too. There's the Sitchin idea, but then there's also the people that branch off and say that Nibiru got too close to our planet and nearly destroyed us, and that's what caused our cataclysm back then. You know, you take the Anunnaki almost out of the situation altogether in that story, which you know, Nibiru is weird.
Well, say what gets me with that part especially is I think I told you this in a message, is that I was meditating after researching Tartaria, and they were saying how the Mercury, if you spin Mercury around that and you put gold leaf in it, that the Mercury will then make the gold leaf come to it. So I had I was doing a meditation, and it was like I was pulling in this gold leaf that was in our atmosphere, and I was pulling it in me, and then I had the intuitive thought, oh, the moon's Niburu. The moon is the object that made the poles freeze, that caused the ice age, or maybe not caused it, but it definitely did some kind of destruction. That the moon coming into our orbit, and maybe the moon needed the gold, and maybe the moon is quote unquote Niburu in some sense. You know.
Yeah, I really liked when you said that, because there are texts that relate to the moon kind of showing up. And people want to dismiss that, but there was a time where at least they didn't mention it in certain texts, and it's just weird, you know. I mean, they mention everything else, but that wasn't a part. I think we're talking really old, but still, that could be it. I mean, when you think about it,
if the earth was flooded and then they wanted the waters to recede, and the moon is connected to the waters, you know, then you put the moon in place, and then all of a sudden, you know, the poles get the sudden surge of water to them, and it's too much water too quickly, and it freezes, and then it's a cataclysm, and maybe that's the start of the ice age.
You know, maybe that is where those two kind of Sitchin theories can come back together, because it doesn't necessarily destroy the planet or cause, you know, a comet-like destruction, like a planet killer, but it would cause an ice age. That's an interesting idea. And especially, have you ever seen a movie called Melancholia?
No, I haven't.
Don't see it. It's really, really depressing. Just don't see it. But it's about this planet that just starts showing up. And, you know, you come into the story with, you know, all the characters are used to it because it's been around in their skies for years at this point, and it's getting closer and closer and closer and closer. You go through the time with these people, and eventually, a lot of people start killing themselves because the scientists were wrong, and it's going to collide with Earth, and it's going to take us out. And it's very, very depressing. And I haven't seen it in a lot of years. And now that I'm thinking about it, that's such a predictive programming type movie, because it's so filled, like, it killed me. And I'm a horror movie guy. That movie destroyed me. It was just like sucking the loosh, if you will, right out of me. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And it's just, that's a little too close to home. Right around that same time, another movie called, I think it was called Another Earth or something like that. Another one came out where there was yet another habitable planet that we literally communicated with. Like, some politician makes the contact and it's her talking to herself back, and it's really sci-fi and weird. But the idea is that we keep having these movies with this theme of this crossing planet coming in. And of course, that is what Nibiru is. It's the crossing. Right. So it's a weird little parallel.
See, the only thing that messes me up is I don't think space exists in the way that, well, I know it doesn't exist in the way they tell us. And then I'm like, is the moon just plasma? You know, it kind of says it in part of the Book of Enoch. It's in part 3 that I haven't released yet. That, you know, at one part it says, the moon is nothing save her light, you know, except for being light. So, you know, it's...
Yeah, how else do we take that, you know?
Yeah, there's so many different things, and maybe, and the way that I read the Book of Enoch, maybe there's several different layers of heaven, so that there are different... So if you're familiar, I don't even know what it's called, but if you're familiar with the triangle in the square that's in the circle, and they're all the same size, and then it repeats itself over and over. So maybe it's that kind of thing, in that we're in the triangle, and then the square is the next heaven, and then the circle is the next heaven, and some kind of fashion is doing that. And I could see maybe... You know, maybe something could come in from the circle to the square, and then the square to the... I don't know how it works, but I have so many different theories and ideas and possibilities running through my mind that it's so hard for me to just settle on one thing.
Me too. I mean, like I said, it's the lotus flower. It's there's always more, which...
And never enough.
We're going a little off topic, but hey, it's all the same topic, really, right?
Right.
That idea right there has been kind of getting at me lately, because it does seem like everything, it feels kind of fake here and there. And after being in the deep psychedelic realms many times, I don't know. I mean, we're out here questioning political narratives and stuff like that, and what's going to happen in 6 months, where we're not really certain we're even really here. I've been saying it for years, man. Like, this whole physical structure's kind of, I can question it. You know what I mean?
I agree.
A lot of times it feels like the strings are being pulled. We all can kind of get behind that. But sometimes it feels like the strings are being pulled from outside of the theater.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I agree with that as well.
Because think about this idea that we can always dig more, and not just the political crappy conspiracy theories that people get wound up in, but even all this stuff that we really love that's embedded in our history and stuff. There's always more. And the plot is always changing. Think about it. The past 10, 15 years, Graham Hancock says it all the time, shit just keeps getting older. Well, what happened 2 or 3 years ago? Oh, they're lying. There's no history. It's so much younger than we're being told. And it's like, well, what the hell? Graham and all those guys, those were the ones, those were the revolutionaries. But now we're going the opposite direction here. What is happening? So in the same way that the news media and entertainment and all that keeps us reeled in and going more, and we never get to the thing. It's kind of the same thing with all of our theories and our all of our digging. It leads naturally on a physical level sometimes, because we're literally unearthing new things. We can't fake that. It's more questions. It's changing the narrative all the time. So
was that the simulation just positing things in because we've unlocked levels that now we can receive this new information?
Perhaps we could go there. That's what I'm saying. Like, the strings sometimes seem to be being pulled from outside the theater, because it seems like the same tactics that quote unquote deep state or the cabal or whatever are using it seems like that happens in nature too. Like my
Mhm.
first big psychedelic experience was kind of finding out that my ego had been running a conspiracy on myself my whole life. And
Right.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. So is it really a bunch of rich assholes, or is it somehow embedded into our reality?
Well, I'll tell you, I when I got involved with the everything is fake community, I realized real quickly that they give almost no credit to humans that are good, and they give so much credit to humans that are evil. And they're saying that you know, people are doing all these crazy things with all these different numbers, and Kamala Harris 56 days before she was inaugurated, and 56 days after she was 56, and 56 that, all these different numbers. And it's like,
Yeah.
hold on, so you think that is real, but then you think that just the way that you think about good people, you think that, good people are sheep and they're stupid, and they, just normal everyday normies, for lack of a better word, that they're completely and utterly stupid, and that these other people are so genius. And it's like, oh, that is the biggest psyop ever. They want you to worship at the altar of I'm not going to say the word anymore. I said I'm not going to use that word any longer, but the financial wannabe leaders, and the government wannabe leaders. That psyop is all about worshiping at their feet, because to me, there's no way that any human, I don't care how smart you are, I've talked to some very genius level people who have, Andreas Exertus is just like a supercomputer.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, there's no way he could, or someone of that caliber could even set up all the different things and numbers from birth in order to set it up. It's impossible.
Yes. So let me kind of try to put a middle road there, because I do find some of the things that the everything is fake crew kind of says to be a little extreme, or a little away from how I see it. But I do have a lot of sympathy for them, because I think they're very much on to something. I don't know if it's fake in the way that they think it's fake. And yes, this idea that, I mean, it's all about paying your attention, right? We're paying too much attention, and we all do that. Whether it's the everything is fake crew, or if it's me. My wife is always getting on me about it. At least now she's on to the whole psyop of the total positivity thing too. So she's kind of stopped yelling at me and telling me to always be positive. But
the new age stuff.
Yeah, like the bad new age stuff. You got to sift through that too, I believe. I don't think it's all bullshit. I don't think it's all made up. Again, there's always a mimicry laid upon something that is true. They can't create. That has been the story all along. So whatever is here that is real, that we can depend on, it's real, and it's not of them. I always say to people that lump in psychedelics in the wrong way with their operations, I say to them, no psyop happened. I mean, I say this now, but who knows? Maybe it's the Matrix, right? But in my opinion, no deep state was around millions and millions of years ago planting mycelia everywhere for magic mushrooms to grow. They weren't planting San Pedro cactus all over the desert for it to evolve and grow and produce peyote. Like, this is bullshit, the way that they do that. I mean, we're going way off on a tangent, and I apologize. We can go back to the Anunnaki.
Keep on going. Well, so I agree with that, but after reading the Book of Enoch, I don't think that anyone other than, the creator of Earth, because if we're talking today about the Anunnaki, we'll say that maybe some beings created us, but we'll talk about the being that created the creation. So if God created the Earth way before they created us, then psychedelics were already here. So what I saw in the Book of Enoch is that the fallen came down here, and this is the myth of how psychedelics started with ayahuasca, especially, is that the people say that the plants talk to them, that they told us. And the Book of Enoch says that, it's the fallen angels are whispering to humans, telling them which plants to make. They call it root cuttings in there. They don't call it psychedelics because this is 5,000 years ago. So the fallen angels got us to take the psychedelics so that we knew more information. And then once we knew that information, then it was like we're in prison now, because now we realize we know too much. We can't get out.
Yeah. Well, it's the Adam and Eve story.
Right.
I mean,
but now
go ahead.
But now psychedelics help us because we are literally in a prison, and the psychedelics free us from it. So even though at one time we shouldn't have done them, now it is very beneficial for us, and they have always been here for this reason.
So you think, now why, I'm just curious, why would they want us to be aware of our prison? That sounds like an Enki move for sure.
Well, so they thought that, okay, so you have to put yourself in the Luciferian Freemason type of mindset of that Lucifer is the good guy who came down to enlighten us and tell us that we're in a prison. And
right.
that this is hell and nothing we do matters, and that you can just do whatever. It's your will, do as thou wilt. You know, that's, so when you're thinking that, oh, this person's, you know, came down and told us to do psychedelics to then inform us, then you're like, oh, okay, I think that's a good person. But then if you stop and think about it, what that did was that didn't allow us to have our own spiritual discernment. And when we didn't grow our own spiritual discernment, then all of a sudden it's like Jordan Maxwell's been awake for 60 years, you know? He's been in prison.
He's miserable.
Yeah.
He's not miserable.
Right. But he's had too much knowledge for too long. And that's what happened to the humans when they first took psychedelics, is that the fallen wanted them to take the psychedelics so that they could then communicate with them, because they couldn't communicate with them until they were in a psychedelic state.
Until their minds were open.
Right. And then their consciousness started mixing. And then from there, they bore giants, because they were controlling the humans, and eventually it wasn't enough. You know, it's like, and I see it now every day with people having attachments to them. And what it looks like to me, because I'm psychic, you know, my third eye's open, all that. So it looks like different, like ghosts are like skating around, and they'll have like pieces of them in several different people, and it's just like they're skating, they're moving the people all around. So what ended up happening is it wasn't enough for the fallen. Then they needed to have their own physical vessel, and that's when they bore out giants in some, you know, I'm not sure exactly how that happened, but
I like that a lot. And the idea that psychedelics were originally like kind of used against us, but now like we were like fighting fire with fire almost, in a way. It reminds me of Revelation of the Method, if you're familiar with that concept.
Why don't you tell my audience that, though?
Sure. It was Revelation of the Method is a term that was coined by a man named James Shelby Downard. He was a writer, he was a conspiracy theorist, but his family was involved in the Freemasons. And he witnessed it firsthand, at like they were in high ranking positions, and he escaped it, supposedly. There's not much that's known about Shelby other than the biography that was written about him. I don't know. Mainly the Revelation of the Method is his understanding of this processing, this alchemical processing of the masses, where it started with, I don't know, I wouldn't like to say it started, but at least perhaps this cycle started with the killing of Kennedy as the killing of the king, which was like the big get, like destroy the American spirit big time. And I remember those stories because my parents grew up back then, and a lot of my friends' parents grew up back then, and everyone says the same thing. Their parents always said, oh, the world stopped that day. Everyone was crying. My mother was crying. Neighbors were crying. I didn't really understand, but I was sad. It destroyed us as a nation. So that was the big energy suck, you know. But this alchemical processing, this revelation of method, is this idea that they slowly are exposing themselves and they're allowing their actions to be exposed. And those that think they're exposing these evil deeds for a good reason are actually literally carrying out exactly what these people want to happen, which is to expose it all. In a way, it's once again, it's the gods using us to do the work. It's that same damn thing all over again. And what I meant by comparing it to your psychedelic idea, where now we know this revelation of method, we've read about it, and you know, Downard is dead. Michael Hoffman has taken over. He's kind of taken up the torch with this whole concept, and he's written books called Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. And his sequel to that book just came out, and it was called Twilight Language. I highly recommend it. You guys can look. Yeah, go to revisionisthistory.org and look under the publications section and the book section. You can find Shelby's King Kill 33, which has been banned everywhere since '87. Wow. And that's all about the Kennedy thing and the process of the killing of the king. So this is a magical thing going on. But again, we're using psychedelics the right way now, or we're benefiting from it because we know what they are. Mm-hmm. So in the same sense, we know what this revelation of method is. So now we kind of have to figure out a way to use it against them, in a sense. I mean, maybe this is getting too dramatic. Maybe I'm getting sucked into it too much, perhaps. But in this frame of thinking, it's we need to expose it before they plan on exposing it, which I think all we've ever been doing is literally being fed what they want to be revealed. And we go, look what leaked, or look what I got out of FOIA, because FOIA can totally be trusted. Why? You know what I mean?
Well, it's super interesting how they do it in that
4D chess, man.
Yeah. Well, I don't even want to go down this topic, but we'll just
no.
I'll just say it for a second here is the Nuremberg codes, and that, you know, if you ask any normie, they have no idea the Nuremberg code, the Nuremberg trials. They don't know anything, but as conspiracy theorists, we do a lot of research and we inform ourselves on the truth of weird things like that. So when we see that all 10 of the codes are being broken for what's being rolled out, you know, it's like, how is that not revelation of the method? They're daring us to stop them.
See it and to see it.
Yeah.
You know, they've been, like, people always say, not always say it, but a lot of people say it, like, they've been telling us this whole time. A lot of people go down the karmic idea, like they have to be honest with us on a karmic level, but I don't think these people care about karma.
Well, I think that I don't know that they care about it, but I think, as I was telling you, I think before we started, the Seraphim is so the Seraphim is a serpent, is angel, and there's a faction of them that are evil. But what they do is they create the DNA strands. You know, they go apart, come together. You know, they're making duality. So they're creating it way far in advance. You know, every single, and I think this is true for every human, that up until puberty, that everything that happens to us is all predetermined based on our ancestors' actions, including our parents, and that their actions directly led to what happened to us up until puberty or around there, and then we start to take over. So, yeah, so the Seraphim is telling them, oh, you have to do this to clear the karma. You know, you can go kill babies and drink their blood, but you have to do this in order to clear it, because I'm the one that's making the duality. Remember, so it's not necessarily that they care about karma.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, you pieced it together for me and brought me back to center, because it's just, you got to think of the definition of karma, because it has no morality attached to it. It's action. That's all it really means.
Right, cause and effect.
Yeah, cause and effect. So yeah, thank you for that. That kind of helped me out in that little area there.
Yes, so I do think that you're right in that they're psychopaths, and they really, they really don't care But there is also this thing where they're like, well, you know, they always told us to do it this way, so I'm afraid to not do it that way because there might be some consequences.
They are ritualistic and of course, and not only that, but psychopaths do what? They repeat shit. They just do the same thing over and over again.
Right.
So yeah, they can't break it. They have to do it. They've been told once, so they'll always do it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, well, let's not go any further down that road.
yeah. So let me so I had this thought the other day, and we'll bring it back to the Anunnaki, in that so if you take a dirt ground and then you take away the water from it and you beat it down with the sun, eventually that ground becomes very cracked and very rigid, very scaly looking. And then we talk about lizard people. And are they really just really, really old humans that have become so devoid of natural resources, of the light, so to speak, that they are just cracking and they look scaly? And is that what the Anunnaki look like? Is that who the Anunnaki are? Is that who the lizard people are? Is that, you know, one and the same, and that's why they have to go underground?
That's interesting, especially the underground part. That's pretty cool, especially the areas where we know that they directly were, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know, does it undo the symbolism that is there, or does it just add to it? You know, Manly P. Hall thought that these levels could exist at the same time, so perhaps that could be the case, while at the same time they did have a lot more wisdom, and the serpent was always a symbol of transformation. It was a symbol of earth energies, the kind of like the mystery surrounding earth energy was what the serpent really stood for. And when you think about who these characters were, good or bad, when you kind of relate it to more of the biblical ideas of, you know, Jesus was tempted with being king of the earth, right? Because Satan it was his to offer, because it's his world. That metaphor carries everywhere with this demiurge and the this and the that, all these same characters. It's attached to the earth. It's attached to the earth, the earth, the earth. So when you read that the symbolism suggests that serpent kind of stood for that back then, is that a psyop? Maybe. Or that could be still true. Doesn't necessarily take away physical ideas too, you know. That's what I was getting into with Manly P. Hall, because he kind of alluded many times to this idea that, like I was saying earlier, it's fractal, right? It's all mimicking itself, it seems. And it comes out in different forms, but somehow the amazing, beautiful part is that it's always telling the same story.
Right.
So we could have aliens from Nibiru while having symbolism that meets up perfectly with Christianity. And meanwhile, Jesus, there could be amazing evidence for as some revolutionary that took off to India and dealt with the Brahmins over there eventually and threw those guys away, you know, and said, no, I'm not going to be part of you guys either, and never was nailed to a cross, blah, blah, blah. And then he could be the symbol with the 33 vertebrae and on the cross and the Kundalini awakening and all that. I mean, I don't know how to make heads or tails when there's such good, solid, at least anecdotal or historical evidence for kind of both perspectives to exist simultaneously.
Right.
And that's kind of weird.
Oh, for sure. And when you were saying Thor and Loki, you said, or I'm sorry, you mentioned them, but you said that Enlil cast Enki into the sea and brought up Zeus and Poseidon.
Right. And Poseidon is that character once again.
Right. So
Prometheus.
And since it is a repeating world and it is a simulation, is it that they were all existing all near or around the same time, but they were all in different countries? Because you know, instead of a simulation, I like to say it's a video game. So, you know,
that's where I was about to go.
I think that the entire Earth is a hallway, and each different continent, or maybe the continents are in the countries, I'm not sure exactly how small it gets, but are they their own simulations, and that they all have the same story, and that somebody broke them all free, and then just, Wreck-It Ralph, broke them all free.
So check this out. I am not a game developer. I would love to have those talents and all that time on my hands to be able to do something like that. But I have messed around in Unreal Engine 4, and it's way over my head, but it's amazing because you can, even someone like me who doesn't know anything, can watch a 5-minute YouTube video and create a world, right? And it's beautiful. And you can put objects in there, and you can add physics and everything, and have a character being chased by an object. And you can leave objects lying around, and you can forget about them, and you can go to build a whole new thing, and eventually be like, oh, what is this? Oh, this was from last time. I got to delete these.
Right.
So what if they call that the sandbox, the Unreal sandbox. This could be a sandbox. We don't know. Like, maybe there's been many, many resets, right? And many, many attempts, or maybe it's not even attempts. Maybe it's just in leisurely enjoyment from some sort of other source of consciousness out there, outside the simulation, perhaps. But maybe they're coming through, and at one point pyramids were built all over the place. Some of them are still around. They just left them there, and they started building other things.
I think the pyramids might have been part of the simulation when it was built.
Yeah. I mean, it's so intricate. It works with the planet and the scale of it, how all the mathematics kind of, the Great Pyramid itself, the math of it kind of works out to be a symbol of Earth.
Right. The four hemispheres.
Yeah. It checks it all off,
And then the way that Enoch describes it, it's, I put it in part 2, is that it's a pyramid with the capstone taken off. And that's a representative of the pyramid with the all-seeing eye sitting above it, and the space in between is hell, is the abyss. And
oh yeah, that's right.
And a couple months ago, I was in this Facebook group, and this guy, I don't even know who he was, he posted this model that he was saying the Earth was in a firmament, pyramid-shaped firmament. And
whoa.
Right, and back then it didn't make any sense to me.
The North Star. Right at the top of the.
Oh wow!
See, you're just driving. You set me off. Holy shit!
Yeah, man. I mean, it's so, there's so many different possibilities. It's so odd, and especially after doing a little bit of studying on Tartaria and how the Earth is a big energy center, and that the pyramids would definitely be part of the circuit board. So whoever made the place, I think maybe the star forts and the pyramids came with the place, that, it was already here.
That was a prefab, right? It was all built in. It's part of the landscape and shit. I mean, what more could we ask? It's not made out of like pressured steel or anything. It's made out of the earth. It's made out of stone. Impossibly. I like that, man. You're blowing my mind tonight. It's great.
Well, I mean, hey, you're blowing my mind as well. And these things are ideas coming together is,
building
very
that pyramid, right?
Yeah.
I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't do this too visibly on conspiracy podcasts,
Yeah, I know. Aleister Crowley might pop up out of nowhere.
Oh God. Scary, man.
Yeah, talking about pyramids. And I will just say this before we get off, is that he channeled this being Lamb, right?
Gray.
Yeah, a gray. And Lamb, if you do your ohms, is the root chakra. So
yeah,
he
channeled. Gee, that makes perfect sense.
Right. Yeah.
Damn.
The world is just such a strange place, because you find truth in the weirdest things, like what we're doing now, mixing together so many different things, that if you're not researching Tartaria and Aleister Crowley, that Lamb reference doesn't make any sense, and you have to dabble into everything, like when before we wake up, we identify with our job, we identify with our family, we identify with the things that we like. We don't identify with ourselves, we identify with things, and we become that thing, and we rely on others. But then once you start waking up, then you got to start, you got to be a scientist. I got to be a doctor. I got to be a geologist. I got to be an archaeologist. Yeah, I got to do every single thing. I got to at least dabble into, because everyone's fucking lying to me.
Yeah.
And I can't trust anybody. And even the conspiracy theorists that I'm watching their videos and stuff, maybe they're controlled opposition. And
Some of them maybe.
Right. So you're like, I got to do this for myself. And that really forced me to never get, well, I don't want to say never, because I was a Q, I don't want to say follower, but I was into Q, because
you were
I was
just kind of looking at it from afar, like, I'm just going to stay right here in case.
I was deep into the decoding and all. I had a lot of free time, and I have an autistic type of mind. So, all the timestamps and the numbers and this and that, and say whatever anyone wants to say about it, but Trump and Pompeo and Dan, I forget his name. Yeah, Scavino. They were all using those types of things against us, knowing that we were dying for it, because we had so much hope. We're like, oh, we see this is bullshit. We see, this has to be, the QAnon thing has to be real. That's what it came down to.
It was so sad.
Right.
But such a shame.
Other than that, I haven't gotten involved in any groups, and what that did for me, that just really helped open me up. And then once Biden was sworn in, I was like, oh, I'm off Twitter, and I already knew back in December, I was like telling people not to follow Trump. I was like, it's Justin Deschamps from Edge of Wonder and Stillness in the Storm. He says it best, that the hero always becomes the tyrant, and that's Trump's role, I think, is that he's going to come in and he's going to be the good guy, and then he's going to become the tyrant, because I feel, it's a lot of predictive programming, as we were talking about earlier.
Let me ask you a question about that real quick. Do you think that, so if the election becomes a fraud, it's going to blindside everyone, because especially the people that didn't vote for him or anything like that are completely like, it's all over, everything's fine, Biden's in there, he's doing okay, Kamala's there to save us.
Is there another opportunity for him to for that to happen?
Well, I mean, Merrick, that's the weird thing. Like, I don't know, what am I getting on the internet? Is it bullshit? Because I saw numbers from Maricopa County or whatever coming out, but then their Twitter page got blocked. Is it going to be just like, it's going to be a wet fart instead of a bang if he did actually win? What I was suggesting was that maybe one of these dates will happen. Maybe it will turn out that, oh, yep, it was all a fraud. But the whole point of that would be not necessarily to maybe put Trump in as, to become their new bad guy necessarily. I don't know, but finding out that you were wrong and the election was a fraud, and your whole country's been lying to you, and your system of faith and trust has been a mockery and a lie, and you have to deal with that now, and you still have to pay taxes and go to work, and it's about to get worse and worse and worse. You know what I mean?
Break a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. So that might be the ultimate point of, admitting that it was fake or whatever.
Well, 9/11 is right around the corner, and so we talked about the killing of the king, the 19-year cycles that they're on. I don't know what happened in 82. I haven't come across what happened in 82.
The problem is it could be so obscure. It could be something not political, not devastating, not destructive.
No,
it could be a book release. It could, you know what I mean?
But I think, so the things that I'm talking about are big things. JFK was 63.
I know.
And then 82, I'm not sure about. But then 01 was the Twin Towers. And now 19 years later was COVID, which didn't take the way that the Twin Towers took. Didn't take the way that JFK took. Right. Maybe it did for a little bit, but because it's so expanded out, it just, people got tired of it, and they're like, oh, this is nonsense for the most part.
9/11 took years to kind of see through the mist.
Right. It wasn't until like 04 or 05 that, So that sleep cycle that 19-year sleep cycle ends in 2 weeks here. 2.5 weeks. So is that what the next thing is? Because the other things didn't work, or what is going to happen when the veil gets lifted up? I keep getting in my meditations that the veil is being pulled away, that people are going to be able to see the truth more and more. So I'm just curious of what's going to happen on 9/11.
And will it happen right on 9/11, or will
Right.
we all be looking at that date obsessively and the day before or 2 weeks
The day
later?
after,
I mean,
right.
I don't know. They are pretty specific and they don't like to divert from their numbers. We know that.
Right.
So it probably would have to be 9/11, but I almost feel like in that same vein that it might be something so subtle and unexpected. I'm expecting like all of us to get nixed off of YouTube or something, or or a
Yeah.
mass, like all of us suddenly get labeled like legit domestic terrorists for
Oh,
talking about any of this, and then them being able to pass that under the shadow of darkness, and 9/11 that morning people's houses are getting raided and shit. That's what
Yeah.
my fear was initially, but that's way too on the nose. That's way too obvious and a little too much tyranny too fast.
Well,
I don't
maybe,
know.
maybe not.
Maybe not. Like you
I
said
mean,
earlier, they're just
Australia's really
they're
ramped it up.
begging. Yeah, us in America are just looking from afar, like, well, Australia must not be real because that's just crazy.
Right.
It's
New
it's
Zealand.
unbelievable. Yeah, I reference that stuff to people, and sometimes they're just like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, the algorithm. That's right. You're not
Yeah.
looking for any of this, so you're not going to see any of it."
Right. Well, I'll tell you what about the terrorist thing, that I think that that they've all labeled us what they're going to label us a long time ago, and I'll even take it back to when I was a baby, because I'll say this: when I was 15 years old, I got kicked out of high school. I was high on Xanax, and I had a friend who was high on Xanax, and he got in a fight with somebody, and I didn't do anything. But somehow the guy that my friend fought, his friend was there, and they wouldn't let me in my next period class. Like, I showed up like right at the bell, and they had the door locked. So I'm just like knocking on the door, and they wouldn't let me in, and I'm like, what is this? So then some teacher comes out and he takes me down to the principal's office. Anyway, make a long story short, I get domestic terrorists, or not domestic, I get terroristic threats because this one teacher who was a known cokehead, who would bully kids, he started shit with me, and I was high on Xannies, and I was like, dude, I know where your car is. If you got a problem, I'll see you over there. And they
Like
gave
a man.
right, and I was 15, and they gave me terroristic threats. And it's like, okay, that's
teaching you
just
not to stand up for yourself from a young age.
Yeah, I can't believe that. I know everything's on its own path, but I can't believe my parents allowed me to sign that. To take that deal.
And
but
that's yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. So what I was going to get at was, they have always known who I am. They have always known my bloodline. They know my bloodline better than me, and I've gotten to know it over the last few years pretty well. And when we're born, why do they take our footprints and our handprints and our fingerprints when
Right.
they're not even good? 6 months later, they don't work. No baby has ever been kidnapped and they're like, oh, let's go to the database to find out this baby's. Why are they doing that? Because they're tracing us from the time we're born, and we don't ask those questions because, oh, everyone just goes along with it.
Yeah. We all do.
So have they always known that who we are, and have they been trying to stifle us from birth by doing these messed up things to us?
I mean, when you say we, do you mean the awake or just
Yeah.
all of us? Yeah.
No,
Okay.
the
Okay. I
awake.
like that. It's very matrixy. We can all put our dark glasses on.
Well, it's like the Mortal Kombat thing where the new Mortal Kombat, Raiden is like, thank you. The bad guy says, oh, thank you for sending me right to his doorstep. And then, 20 minutes later, after the good guy kicks the bad guy's ass, Raiden's there. He's like, thank you for making my warrior become what he needed to be.
Right, exactly.
So, is them trying to stifle us, did that actually awaken us?
Yeah, I like that. And you know what's a funny idea I've been playing with lately with all the predictive programming? I've been aware of predictive programming for quite a while, but the extent that I've been shown lately, some people have their finger on this pulse real close. So I've been really paying attention to it lately. I'm thinking back to I'm a cinephile, man. I love movies. So it just threw my head thinking about Hook, right? Hook always wanted his war with Peter Pan, but he had to wait because he couldn't fight the codfish. He needed his great and worthy opponent. And I'm wondering, so I put this up on Twitter today, actually, or yesterday or something. If like the vaccine, I hate talking about this, so I'm just going to put it out there. The vaccine was to depopulate us. Why would they start with the willing? Why would they start with the people that are just already submissive to their will anyway? You know what I mean? I mean, this is just a broad perspective that perhaps they want the battlefield cleared. So like they're waiting for us because we always call it theater, or I do quite often. It doesn't have to be everything is fake, but it's a theater of war for sure. It's all theater, and they love dramatics. And so it leads me to think maybe they want their epic war that they know is coming anyway. Let's not snuff them out. Who wants a blowout?
Yeah, that's a good point. With that, I have several different lines of thinking. Like, okay, that it's a thing to keep them in the physical world while we become astral metaphysical beings and we ascend, and they're not able to because now they have some kind of microchip in them that's holding their soul here, or is it that they want to get rid of everybody that wants to submit, and they want to restart a new earth where they need people who don't conform, that people that think for themselves.
Did you ever play? Are you into video games at all?
I used to be somewhat.
BioShock?
I have not played that.
Okay, so BioShock was based on a movie from like the 30s or something called Welcome to Rapture. And it was about this underwater base, this whole society of scientists. And it was no rules, no morals, do whatever you want. You have freedom. You are the gods of this place now. And of course, you go in as the character to fix everything because it's hell on earth under there. So that's just that popped into my head with what you're saying here, because maybe you're right. And maybe what they need, as always, is us, more workers, but this time perhaps maybe they need really, really, really creative ones or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
they're doomed if they try to do it, though. If they leave us alone, oof.
Well, I think that they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. I think
absolutely
that no matter what, and I'll keep it with me because I can't speak for everybody, but I know that there are certain very odd things that occur with me and my technology, and not just the technology, but there's certain things that happen near me that are just very odd, and it's like, I know that you're fucking with me. Like I know that you are fucking with me, and if you keep fucking with me, things happen. And I have all these different psychic abilities that sometimes I can't really control it. And when I am meditating and like one of them will pop into my mind because like all of a sudden a military plane is just like going over the house real slow, and then I can send my consciousness to that plane and I can interact with those people, and then I scare the fuck out of them because I'm actually interacting with them while they're watching me. And it's
that's
like
creepy.
yeah, well, they're creeped out by it. I have some very strange things happen in my meditations, and they backed off because they're like, they were trying to stop things happening, and then they saw that just increased it, and now they're like, well, we don't want to do anything. It's a landmine wherever they walk.
That's awesome, man. And I believe what you're saying. I don't want you to think it, because like I've heard that from multiple people that I trust, that when you get really good at meditating, real shit starts to happen.
Oh
And
yeah.
for me, I'm always blocked by my visualization capabilities. I meditate and I do get a lot out of it, but I don't get to where I want to be. And I know I'm hung up on that too in some ways. Maybe you and I could talk more about, what you do. Maybe you can give me some good tips, or I can take one of your courses or something,
Yeah, we could definitely do something. It's like you kind of just gotta, I got here from doing different things, so it's a process of clearing out, and once you're clear enough, you can do kind of whatever. And
Mhm.
It's just very strange in the things that occur. But I affect my physical environment all the time. I mean, one time I had the lights in our bedroom just popped. Uh,
Yeah, only the bedroom. Not the whole rest of the house was fine. Just the bedroom.
yeah, and when that happened is I shot a beam of light up to God to get this reptile, and I missed. And the reptile, he looked down at me and started laughing and was like dancing around. And then God shot a beam of light back down, and as soon as it came back down, that's when the lights popped in the bedroom.
Dude, I love it. I love it. I've had that kind of thing happen to me, not through meditation, because like I said, I haven't gotten deep enough for real shit to happen, but uh I would say connected in a certain way is lucid dreaming. To
Right.
the lucid dreaming is very connected to this, ethereal idea. And so I was having this wild lucid dream years ago, and I just was trying to wake up. This was the first lucid dream I had ever had, and unfortunately it was my last too. And I didn't know that it was a lucid dream. I didn't know how to recognize it. So of course you feel trapped in, once you realize you're asleep, it's terrifying.
Hmm.
So I try to open every window, but every window's locked. I can't see the outside. You know what I mean? It's
Oh wow.
every metaphor is playing into what I'm feeling. It's awesome. Like I can at least recognize that this is awesome. I hear a dinosaur outside. There's futuristic shit in my room. This is really, but it's also terrifying, and I got to wake up.
Oh
So I
wow.
guess like eventually I picked up a cell phone and I tried to call someone, and this robotic voice told me I needed to press a certain, I needed to like type in my birthday. I can't remember what it was to wake up, do this. And once I did that, my phone rang, and I
Oh
woke and
wow.
I woke up. And
Wow.
that was awesome. Like those kinds of things where like you literally bring something from there out here,
Right.
and you still, unfortunately, it's not pulled out far enough to really prove to anyone. But
Yeah.
just what's it matter, because you're proving to yourself, like,
Yeah.
holy shit. Now I have to have faith that that actually just happened.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing is that if you don't go try to prove it to somebody else, it'll happen more and more. But the more that you share it, the less likely the universe is to show you it. And
Secret societies.
maybe, but I think, well, so I'll say from my vantage point is the universe looks at it when we talk about our experiences.
Mhm.
The most precious experiences to us, we
Right.
don't often share. When you have that loving moment with your wife, that loving moment with your child, you keep that. You
Yeah.
don't send it out. So the universe kind of looks at it that if you're telling everybody, you know, every single psychic attack that happens, or maybe not attack, but psychic thing that happens, it's like maybe he can't handle it, because if it was that special to him, he would keep it to himself. And
Ooh.
a lot of people don't understand that, and they want to talk about it because they're like, oh, you felt something 10 minutes ago too. It's like, you're in Montana, I'm in Florida. What does that have to do with each other? Just because we experienced it at the same time doesn't mean that it is actually connected. And
Mm.
that's one thing that we do as conspiracy theorists, as spiritual people. We try to connect things that maybe not there. And when
Mhm.
we do those things too often, well, in this sense anyway, the universe is like, oh, I'm going to back off,
Yeah, looks like you got this under control. You're
Yeah,
doing your thing. You're gonna play your game. Okay.
right. Yeah, well, I think it's kind of like oh, well, they only go on social media and share things that they don't like. They're always bitching on social media, and then they go on social media and they talk about being psychic, and they're like, oh, maybe
Yeah.
maybe they don't want that.
I mean, you know how Sam Tripoli kind of coined the idea. I think he coined the idea of like conspiracy leading to spirituality.
Yeah.
It can work both ways, definitely. Because I had the spiritual stuff first from my psychedelic experiences. And that's what led me into going, hey, wait a minute, why isn't everyone talking about this? Just
Yeah.
I used to love quoting Ram Dass, how he said, once you get the good news, you want to run down the church aisles singing it to everyone.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is going on? Of course, he has, don't want to read too much into what Ram Dass might have said because he could be controlled opposition and all that. I don't know.
Oh, really? I never.
Well,
even
see,
heard
that's
that.
I'm just musing at this point, just because, I mean, he was a Harvard guy, right? So, and his, he comes from, rich white scientists and all that, and people just make all those connections, and they try to rip out every good part of what is still there and always has been. It's
right.
It's the psychedelics are, like you said, it can be used for good now because we recognize, first of all, it's not the chemical that does anything. It's almost like the chemical goes in there and goes, okay, and just holds the door open, and allows things to be. So now that we know that, perhaps we can use them the right way. We went off on a lot of tangents.
Hey, no worries. I did want to touch right at the end when you were saying about Ram Dass going to Harvard and how we connect things. I was listening to something and there was someone talking about someone's family and like, oh, they can't be trusted because this person's father did this person's mother did this, and it's like I look at myself and I'm like, not necessarily my parents, but if my brothers were to do something, like that doesn't have anything to do with me. When someone tells me, like, is giving me information about, who's doing what, if it applies to my life and I look at it on that scale, like, okay, just because my brother might think this and just because my father might have done that, that that doesn't have any bearing to do with me.
Right.
So when we say, oh, he went to Harvard, he might not be above board, it's not everyone that goes to Harvard is a bad guy. Not everyone that's a Jesuit is a bad guy. Not everyone that's a Freemason. Well, no, I think everyone's a Freemason is
well, I mean, my grandfather was a Freemason, and I think he was one of those guys that thought he was doing the community thing.
Right.
And I have a friend not deep into, but he's a Freemason who's also honestly very, very similar to you in the sense of your abilities and your interests.
And he's a Freemason?
He is. But here's the interesting part, not to give too much into his personal story, but he, in a sense, came to Freemasonry through Buddhism, through AA, through his his self-torment and his recovery, and that's the path that he took. And it's interesting because he's always on the fence with what's going on way up there, but I mean, they need plenty of smoke and mirror in front of them too. And I think that's the reason why not most, but there's plenty of, I could become a Freemason. Well, maybe not now, because they do look into everybody and look at the podcast I have, but you know what I mean? Like there was a period of time where I did want to be, because I always looked into the history going back to Sumer. Are you familiar with Matthew LaCroix, the author?
Yeah.
So, he believes more along the lines of kind of an ancient race, ancient alien, maybe kind of line. But what he's also deeply researching is following this serpent versus eagle kind of mentality, this idea that there was like factions vying for this truth, that perhaps maybe these secret societies were set up not necessarily as like an evil doing thing necessarily. Maybe they were set up on a neutral zone and they were infiltrated just like everything else gets infiltrated. But then again, I don't know. I'm talking in circles because we've gone way beyond that with this whole place could be controlled. So,
well, I will say that it is easy to jump from Buddhism to Luciferianism because they're both theisms. They're both I am God, and you know, they're not religions in that sense, but they're still cults that, you know, and same with the New Age. So there was something at the end you just said. I forget what
I know. I talk in like a wide branching spiral.
No, it's okay. So the best guess that I can give in that how Freemasons thought, you know, came together and thought they were doing the right thing is that they realized, okay, so if we take the timeline deception, this will be a good way to end this as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you take the timeline deception, and if you posit in that, okay, the last 1,000 years didn't happen the way that they were said, that instead, you know, Fomenko, he says that it happened, you know, that it happened in 1,000 years, all the last 2,000 years. Which, okay, maybe it did happen 1,000 years, but I think it happened from the year 0 to the year 1,000, and that from the year 1,000 to the year 1800, that's the missing time. That there's something there. That there's not like they just created 800 years out of thin air. That they were covering up 800 years, and maybe that 800 years was a Mad Max style place, and that the Freemasons. Yeah, and the Freemasons joined forces to put an end to all these tyrannies all over the world, all these warring factions, and that they had to be secretive and they had to get rid of everything slightly and change this and manipulate that in order to cover up the post-apocalyptic world that existed.
Wow, that's interesting. I like that.
That's my best guess at why they think they're good. Yeah.
Shit, now I lost it. It made me think of another movie, something you said in there, but I lost it. But was it Children of Men? No.
What's that one with Jamie Foxx when he's the blind guy?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
He kicks
Ray
everybody's
Charles?
ass. No.
No, not that one.
No, he kicks everybody's ass. He always has the Bible with him, but nobody knows he's blind.
Denzel Washington. That's exactly the one I was thinking Jamie about. Fox, the Book of Eli. It definitely made me think of that because the only reason why they were looking for that book, the Bible, was because whoever held that book held order in this world.
Yeah.
So maybe interesting.
The Freemasons, you know, that's the only conclusion I can come to is why they think that they're good.
Can you imagine feeling that way and not being able to tell anyone? Of course you're going to fill the movies with what really happened.
Right.
You're going to need to get that out of you. I know I would.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe someone was Enki at some point.
Yeah, maybe there was. But I really think that, you know, with all my understanding of predictive programming, I really think it's a possibility, maybe not 800 years, but maybe there was a time period for it that you know, it makes too much sense with if there were mud floods and then everything dried up, eventually it would become desert sand everywhere. And you look at Egypt, and if you leave the pyramids for a summer, that you'll have to unbury it. You know, it happens so quickly that there could be, you know, the Sahara itself could be a whole utopia under all that sand, and we just don't know.
Yeah, that's always really mystified me, that whole area. I mean, you know, and it really upset me even as a younger person when we were going into those areas for oil or for this or for that, like the Iraqi
Stargates.
desert. And, yeah, right. And the whole Persian Gulf where all the old Mesopotamian, the oldest cities in the world that we know of. I don't know. It's weird, man, because you know, you cherish these historical ancient places and stuff when you love this kind of stuff. But nowadays with all the theories flying around, it's like, I don't know, all these buildings are here to confuse me, and they're here on purpose. And, you know, you go down all these rabbit holes, and it's sometimes tough to keep that positive thing going, because I mean, this is all of this is rife with side roads that will take you right down the dark night of the soul every time you turn around.
Well, maybe that's what it's all about, right? Maybe because like as you said throughout the episode, that maybe we don't find the truth because it keeps us looking.
Yeah. Keeps
maybe
us
we
driven.
have to keep looking, because if you accept that the universe is 14 billion years old, but the next closest star is 15 billion light years away, it's like, oh, we wouldn't be able to see that light yet for another billion years. So we know that's not true then.
Right.
So it's just, we know that's not true. That's what they're giving us. And then, what is it only 6,000 years old? Because the Freemasons keep a pretty good track of it. And if you add 4,000 years onto the actual year, then that's what they say is how old the earth is. And that's what the Bible says as well. And all the Freemasons are under the umbrella of the Methodist Church, Methodist Christianity. And it's like, why is that? I don't know.
Man, we're gonna uncover it all, because all these questions that we're asking right now, I think maybe in a way we're causing the answers to come out eventually. We're asking the questions, so we demand it. I look at the algorithm that you use through Google as kind of a mimicry of what we're already doing. We ask the universe, because that's what a lot of people say. I don't know if they're friggin' controlled opposition too, but they say ask the universe, don't demand the universe or this or that, but ask the right questions. How will the universe show me love today? Or how can I cheer someone up today? Or how can I do better today? Asking those questions, you get the answers. And I experiment with that all the time, and it comes right back. It happens. It really does. So it's an algorithm of some sort.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like everything else, is a mimicry, it's all a mimicry. They're just copying humanity. They're doing their best. Cell phones are just a copy of our abilities. The internet is just it is the internet, the internet. That's what we have in us. So
it's a net.
Yeah. Well, yeah, why is it always a net?
It's a net to catch us. Yeah. I don't know. This was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. This was a great conversation. I mean, we went all over the place, but I loved it. It was a free-flowing conversation, and even though we derailed early on from what we set out to do, I think it was better than what we could have dreamed of.
Maybe I'll have to have you come on my show, and we can finish, we can pick up where we derailed. We can just do more.
Sounds good.
And then we can derail ourselves again.
Yeah, I'm always up for derailing.
Cool, man.
So do you want to tell my audience where they can find you at?
Absolutely. Yeah. You could find me everywhere at the Deep Share podcasts on Instagram. My new website, thedeepshare.com. Check that out. And that's pretty much it. Just putting myself out there, trying to expand this whole idea. I'm not sure where it's going, but I want it to go more than just this,
Yeah. Hey,
who knows?
I think you're on a really solid path. I think that your show is really well done, and that you have the foresight of doing different roundtables with interesting people, and you have a large vision, and you're very patient with how it comes to you. And I think that you're on the right path.
Well, I could say the same to you, man. I mean, after digging into your material and getting to know you, man, I definitely want to have you on, by the way. And just to let your audience know that you're already going to be on one of the roundtables you speak of in the fall, because I'm going to be doing I'm calling it The Witness. And it's basically, I'm trying to come at this very personal, deep down spiritual, if you want to call it that, phenomenon that happens to us in many different ways. I want to come at it from the ET, interdimensional kind of contact perspective, if I can get some people. I want to come at it from a paranormal perspective, the psychedelic perspective, and the near-death perspective. So I think you're going to be on the psychedelic one, I believe, right?
Yes, sir. I can't wait.
And that one's going to be a big one because I think we have like, this is so typical. We have like 8 people for that one already, I think.
Oh, wow.
So, and I don't mind that. I think I'm confident that I can control a large group enough that we can keep it flowing. And I don't have a lot of rules, as you can see by the way we converse, you know. So I think it'll be a pretty good show. I think it'll be cool.
Yeah, it sounds good. You know, a bunch of people getting around talking about their psychedelic experience. You know, that'll be a very nice time.
Yeah, I don't want to talk around psychedelic experience. I want us to talk about our experiences, and that I don't hear it enough. You know, maybe it's old hat now. I don't know.
Well, yeah, they're hard to bring back. I think is probably the biggest thing is that, and people like to. Well, I don't want to say people like to, but it's hard when you tell someone your experience because they didn't experience it. So if you're so excited and then they're just like they have no interest and you're like, I don't want to tell you anybody
it's like
ever
explaining
again.
Yeah, it's like explaining a dream sometimes. But that's why you need a bunch of trippers together, because that's my goal really in each one of these is to see some similarities, some synchronicity among the experiences. And I know they're there. I just want to see them on my show.
I do ask all my guests, well, I try to ask all of them, to end the show, what is their number one go-to grounding technique? And what is their number one go-to relaxation technique? You know, what do you like to do when you're studying, researching a lot, it gets a little dark, or maybe you're meditating a lot and you're off in the astral world and you're not paying attention to what's going on in front of your face? How do you bring yourself in, and what do you like to do for fun when you're not doing all this?
So to center myself, it's oddly enough usually a lot of metal music. And I'm not in denial that may end up changing down the road after all these years a little bit, but it's born into me, man. And I somehow gain a lot of peace listening to insanely intricate guitar work and drumming. I use not even vocals. I don't care about the screaming one way or the other. It could be there or not, but the music is that of pure spiritual channeled genius from so many of these artists. And I can completely lose myself in that magnificent architecture of sound that I find there. So that's not what I do for fun. That's what I do to ground myself. And I get that on my rides home from work. You know, in the morning, I'm usually listening to podcasts and listening to different articles and that, you know, this and that on my way in. But on my way home, it's that decompression away from that long day of work and everything. Right. It's always the music, you know. For fun, I climb mountains and I play with my kid. Those are my two main things. My kid and my wife, my family's everything. And those mountains are always calling though.
That's
and
amazing.
Eventually he'll be big enough to come with me soon enough.
Wow. So how old is he?
He's going to be 4 this fall.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So I can tell you for sure that all the things you said you're the first guest to say any of them.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, you're original, unique type of guy, and you know, you bring your own flavor, and it's needed. You know what I notice most, because I consume so many podcasts, is that it's not entertaining enough on so many podcasts, that people think that just getting together and talking is the entertainment, and it's like, I can hear anyone talk, you know, but it's got to be entertaining. You know, Sam Tripoli does it very well. Alex Stein does it very well. You know, they keep you engaged, and you're sitting there waiting for the next moment. And when you just have people, because so many people have podcasts these days, when you just have people that are there, just, you know, people will show up because, you know, I have followers, you have followers, so they'll just show up if we come join together. You know, I look at it at the opposite. I'm like, no, I don't want to just do something just to do it. I want to do it well.
Yeah, man. I totally agree because I've had my most favorite episodes have been with other podcasters, even though I've learned a lot from authors and other researchers. And I love those guys and girls. Like I've had great conversations with everybody, but there's just this awesome camaraderie here that really fuels all of it. I love that. And I totally get that, man.
Yeah.
Right there with you.
Yeah, we got to keep it entertaining. I think you do a really well. You do a really good job of that on your
Thanks,
show.
man. Thank you. I think your show is fucking great, man. I didn't mean to swear, but
that's fine.
I love all the research you're doing, and we got to keep in touch for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I mean, I love when we're going DMing back and forth on Instagram.
Yeah, man.
We're definitely just going talking about it all.
It's the only way to really do it because it's all connected. And I know that sounds crazy. And I know we just talked about how not every connection is meaningful, right? But in the grand scheme, we're part of something that is all one big thing that it's all pieces to a puzzle, and we each have a unique one to place on the pile.
No, that's a beautiful way to end it. Mimi, do you have anything?
I don't.
Yes, you.
I don't today.
Yes, the Anunnaki is not Mimi's, and conspiracies.
No, it's not that it's not my thing. It's just I don't know as much as both of you, so I don't have those questions. I'm more studying Jesus right now, so I'm on that end.
Which one?
Well,
yeah, that's.
Well, I'm actually just reading about the grandmother of Jesus.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, and there is a lot of connections between some of the things that you guys talk about and this.
See? Yeah, I love it.
A lot of mystery school stuff and how
a lot of mystery school and pyramids and certain chambers that are set to certain frequencies to help with certain trainings.
Yeah, they said that the pyramids were schools for the kids. They were the mystery schools that underneath
teach them to use their powers, basically.
Yeah. Oh man, that echoes so much in Netflix shows all over the place now. So yeah, I could totally buy into that, man. Cool, man.
All right, man. Well, that's going to do it. So everybody, we want to thank you all for coming out, and make sure you stop by the Deep Share podcast and everywhere where you can find Andy. I will talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.